On a frozen New York sidewalk, Graham Whitmore, a real estate tycoon used to buying anything with a signature, stopped with his hand on the car door and felt a strange emptiness cut through all the Christmas sparkle. Just a few steps away, a small boy clutching a worn-out stuffed dog stared at his face like he could see something nobody else noticed. And when that kid said, "Santa Claus and a house," Graham realized the most expensive word of the night wasn't millions. It was door. There was one detail in that request that was about to turn his world completely upside down. And you, where are you watching from? Drop your city, state, or country in the comments. Christmas Eve cold gave New York that beautiful, merciless glow. Store windows blazing, impatient horns, people rushing with shopping bags, and a wind that raced between the buildings like it had somewhere better to be. In the middle of all that, Graham Whitmore, one of the city's big real estate moguls, walked out of the Langford Hotel in Midtown with a spotless overcoat and a head stuffed with numbers. The meeting had been a success, another one, but he'd been living with a strange feeling lately, like all those wins were always a few steps behind what actually matters. He was about to slide into the back seat of his car when he noticed a Christmas tree set up on the sidewalk, full of boughs, sponsor logos, and lights so perfect they almost looked fake. Near it stood a boy, perfectly still, watching the world with the tired eyes of someone who learned too early how things really work. Noah, hugging a beat-up stuffed dog to his chest, seemed smaller than he should in that freezing air. He wasn't asking for money. He wasn't tugging on anyone's sleeve. He just locked eyes with Graham, like, out of everyone passing by, he'd chosen the last possible person to listen. "Mister, you look like you know Santa," Noah said, dead serious, his thin voice shaking more from cold than fear. Graham let out a short, automatic laugh, the kind we use when we want to stay uninvolved. "I don't know him." The boy squeezed his stuffed dog like it was borrowed courage. "Then, can you tell him to get me a house? A real house. For me and my mom." If that simple request already hit you in the chest, stick around and subscribe. Some stories start small and end up shifting everything. The word house hit Graham in a ridiculous way. He made a fortune buying and selling properties, signing papers that reshaped whole blocks, and yet that one word dried out his mouth. He went hunting for an easy explanation. Hidden camera, prank, somebody filming for likes. Nothing. Just the wind knifing down the avenue, the fake cheer of the lights, and a boy who wasn't asking for luxury, just shelter. Graham tried to answer, but his voice caught for a second. Where are you sleeping?" Noah lowered his eyes, as if saying it out loud would shrink his mother even more, and pointed with his chin toward a darker corner, near a bench. Graham followed the gesture, and saw a woman curled up, trying to disappear. The problem was that when she lifted her face, her eyes seemed to say only one thing: "Please, don't see me." And that's when Graham understood that, before any kind of help, he was going to have to listen to everything she'd been choking back for far too long. The woman stood up slowly, the way you do when you've already learned that any sudden movement draws attention, and attention, on the street, doesn't always come wrapped in kindness. Maya, Noah's mom, had a pale face, deep dark circles, and a way of holding her bag tight to her chest, like it was the last border between her and the world. Graham noticed her hands, red and cracked from the cold, trying to hide how much they shook. And even then, when she looked the millionaire in the eye, she didn't ask for anything. What she did was pull her son closer, instinctively, as if her whole body was saying, "He didn't bother anyone. If he did, that's on me. I'm sorry." She began in a low voice, almost swallowed by the noise of the avenue. He doesn't stop once he gets something in his head?" Noah jumped in to correct her with the pure logic of a kid who still believes rules are supposed to be fair. "I just told the truth, Mom. He looks like he's in charge of things." Graham felt a strange discomfort because the boy was right. His whole life, people had either feared him or wanted something from him. And now here was a kid stating that like it was the simplest thing in the world. No flattery, no calculation. "What's your name?" Graham asked, looking at her first, carefully. "Maya, and this is Noah," she answered, and the way she said her son's name sounded like a shield. They hadn't been on the street for years, like Graham first assumed. It had been 3 months, just 3, long enough to lose documents, routine, self-respect, and for the body to start charging the bill. Maya explained in fragments, like telling the whole story at once would hurt too much. She used to clean office buildings in Manhattan. Then a restructuring cut her shifts, then cut her. Rent fell behind. A friend who said stay a few days eventually asked her to leave. And suddenly she was bouncing her son from shelter to shelter, from someone's couch to a park bench. The cruelest part wasn't just sleeping badly. It was waking up and realizing that, to the city, she had turned into a shadow. "You know what's worse?" Maya said. Her voice wobbled, but she pushed on, like she needed to get the words out. "It's not hunger. It's not the cold. It's when you realize people look through you. Like you're a dirty window. You become invisible." Look? That word hung in the air. Invisible. Graham looked around and saw, for the first time that night, what had always been there. People veering away, speeding up, pretending not to notice. He'd walked past people like this hundreds of times without stopping. Now, with Maya speaking, it suddenly felt impossible to unsee. Noah squeezed his mother's hand and said in a small voice, as if apologizing for existing, "I just wanted a door that closes, you know." That's all. Graham felt something tiny crack inside him. He didn't know what to say yet. He only knew he couldn't just get in the car and disappear like nothing had happened. And just as the driver opened the door and waited for the usual command, Grimes' phone buzzed in his pocket, the reminder for a multi-million-dollar meeting he couldn't miss. Exactly at the moment he realized maybe he didn't want to be there at all. The phone buzzed again, insistent, lighting up Grimes' face with the reminder he himself had set. Last-minute meeting. Investors, numbers, champagne. Another deal to stack on top of all the others. The driver was holding the car door open, waiting for the usual, "Let's go." But Graham couldn't take his eyes off Noah, who was still clinging to that stuffed dog like it was a piece of home. Beside him, Maya held her chin up, not out of pride, but survival. The kind of dignity that doesn't ask for applause, just begs not to be crushed. Graham started, then stopped, because he didn't know how to begin without sounding offensive. I can help you, at least. Get out of this cold for now." Maya let out a short, humorless laugh and shook her head. "We've heard that before. There's always someone who says they'll help, until they realize we're work." The sentence didn't come out angry. It came out tired. And that's what hit him hardest. Graham swallowed, like he'd been caught in an old lie he told himself, that this kind of thing wasn't his problem. He was about to say he understood, but he didn't. He understood contracts, deadlines, clauses, people who flattered him, and people who hated him. He didn't understand a mother trying to be invisible so she wouldn't be humiliated. The driver cleared his throat, discreetly, eyes flicking to the clock. Graham finally looked around and saw the scene like he was outside his own body. The perfectly staged sidewalk tree, the pretty lights, luxury cars sliding by, and a boy asking for a door that closes. The meeting suddenly looked like a play, and the worst part was realizing he was about to go back to that stage, just because that is what he always did. Graham took a slow breath, grabbed his phone, and before he could talk himself out of it, typed a quick message. "I'm not coming. Reschedule." When the phone rang immediately afterward, he hit silence with a calm he didn't recognize in himself. Maya watched all of that with suspicion, like she was waiting for the trap to reveal itself. Graham opened the back door and spoke quietly, firmly. "Just get in." 10 minutes somewhere warm. If you want to leave after that, I won't stop you." Maya hesitated, looked at her son, and Noah looked back with that stubborn hope kids still carry, even when they shouldn't. That's when she gave in, one step at a time, like she was crossing a bridge that might collapse. But as the car pulled away from the sidewalk, Graham realized something uncomfortable. He had no idea how to help them without turning it into humiliation. And exactly because of that, the next step was going to be the most delicate one of the night. The car slid through Manhattan like it was crossing two worlds at once. Outside, store windows glowed. People laughed with steaming cups in their hands. Christmas music leaked from spinning doors. Inside, the air was warm and smelled like clean leather. A kind of comfort that, to Maya, felt almost wrong. She perched on the edge of the seat, shoulders tight, hands folded in her lap, like the upholstery might spit her out at any second. Noah, on the other hand, slowly relaxed, resting his forehead against the glass and tracing a line with his finger that vanished right away. Graham didn't want to turn the ride into an interrogation, but the hunger was obvious. He stopped at a simple, open place, no fancy restaurant with people staring. He bought sandwiches, hot soup, hot chocolate for Noah. When he handed her the cup, the boy held it with both hands and blew on it like it was a treasure. Maya tried to refuse at first, out of habit, out of defense. "You don't have to," she murmured. "Yes, I do," Graham answered without harshness, almost like he was talking to himself. At least today. She stayed quiet, but her eyes never left her son, sipping that hot chocolate, like it was the first good thing that had happened all day. Graham watched her throat bob as she swallowed back tears. Later, he took them to a nearby mall, one of those places where everything always looks polished. Maya froze at the entrance, staring at the well-dressed people, the gleaming floor, the security guards. Shame arrived before anyone said a single word. "This is a bad idea," she whispered, taking half a step back. Graham dropped his voice. "You're not going to ask anyone for anything. You're just going to pick out what you need." As she stepped inside, her whole body looked ready to take a hit. The sales clerk who walked toward them didn't have time to give a single dirty look, because Graham spoke first, polite and direct. Warm clothes, her size and his. Just the basics. The real turning point wasn't the bags or the amount on the card. It was the shower. Graham paid for access to a small private space with clean towels and hot water, then waited outside without rushing, without hovering like a benefactor. When Maya came back out, she looked like a different person, not because she was prettier, but because she was. Back, her hair was still damp, her coat zipped up to her neck, her hands steadier. She caught her reflection in a store mirror and stopped. The woman looking back at her was someone she'd almost forgotten, herself. Her mouth opened like she was going to say, "Thank you," but what came out was a short sob. She turned her face away, trying to hide it. Noah wrapped his arms around her waist and said, "Ma, you look like you again." Graham stayed a few steps behind, not intruding, feeling a strange pressure in his chest. It wasn't pride, and it wasn't charity. It was discomfort, the realization that so little could make such a huge difference, which only exposed how deeply abandoned they'd been. Maya wiped her face with her sleeve, took a breath, and finally looked at Graham like she'd decided to believe him a tiny bit. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely there. Graham opened his mouth to answer and saw it. Maya's hand flew to her side, like a sudden bolt of pain had shot through her. She covered it quickly, but he'd already seen. In that moment, he understood it wasn't just about cold and hunger. Something was happening to her health, and there was no way he could pretend he hadn't noticed. Graham tried not to react too fast, because he knew that kind of fractured pride, when someone is at the edge, but would rather swallow the pain than admit weakness. But the way Maya had grabbed her side had been too sharp to be just tired. Her lips pressed together. She adjusted her coat like nothing had happened and tugged Noah's hand, trying to keep the illusion of normal that her life hadn't had in months. Noah, distracted by the lights and the shopping bags, didn't catch it. Graham did. "You okay?" he asked quietly, like he was asking without pinning her to the wall. "I'm fine." "It was just a twinge," Maya replied automatically, then added defensively, "It's just the cold." Graham watched her a second longer than what's socially comfortable. It wasn't judgment. It was attention. "Maya, I might be wrong, but that didn't look like just a cold." She dropped her eyes to a random spot on the shiny mall floor, and for a second, her expression cracked, like she was exhausted from holding her life together with tape. He didn't talk about public assistance or charity care. He didn't use words that sound like pity. He just said, "I'm going to take you to a clinic nearby. A checkup." No arguing. Maya opened her mouth to refuse, because that's what she'd been doing ever since the world stopped seeing a person when they looked at her. But then Noah tugged on her sleeve and whispered, "Mom, please." She took a long breath, and the refusal died before it could form. It wasn't surrender. It was love. "Okay," she said, eyes on the ground. "Just don't turn this into a spectacle." The private clinic felt like another planet. A faint disinfectant smell, quiet reception, soft music, comfortable chairs. Maya tensed up again, bracing like someone was about to tell her she didn't belong. Graham handled it in 2 sentences. No raised voice, no drama. He paid at the front desk, asked for discretion, and sat far enough away not to look like he owned her life. Noah sat with him, drawing on the blank paper they gave him, sketching a little house with smoke coming out of the chimney, the simplest dream in the world. When the doctor called Maya in, she walked with her chin up, but her hands were cold and damp. Graham stayed with Noah, hearing only muffled bits through the door. A question, a pause, another question. Time stretched. Noah stopped drawing and looked up at Graham with a seriousness too old for his age. "She's gonna be okay?" A dry knot tightened in Graham's chest, because he couldn't promise anything. "We're doing everything we can right now, okay?" He answered, trying to smile with his eyes. "And that matters." When the door finally opened, Maya came out changed. Not crying, not collapsing, just emptier, like the news had taken the air out of her. The doctor stepped aside and asked to speak with Graham down the hall. And there, in that spotless corridor, Graham heard something he never imagined hearing on Christmas Eve. Maya wasn't just worn out. She had a serious condition that was getting worse, something that needed urgent care, tests, follow-up, medication. Graham listened without interrupting, but inside, his mind roared. Suddenly, this wasn't about a nice gesture anymore. It was about time. Maya caught his expression and tried to get ahead of it, already knowing how the world usually treats sick people with no money. "I'll figure it out," she said, more to convince herself than him. "I always do." Graham drew a breath, and his voice came out firm, with no heroics. "No, not this time. You're not going to figure it out alone. I'm going to take care of this. Until you're okay." Maya looked at him like that sentence was dangerous. And maybe it was, because right then, she didn't know if this was hope, or just another promise that would shatter. What came next would test both of them. Her ability to accept help without feeling humiliated, and his ability to prove he wasn't just a rich man trying to calm his own conscience. Graham refused to let that conversation die in the clinic hallway, because he knew exactly how this world works. If he gave too much space, Maya's instinct would be to retreat. So he did something he almost never did in business. He made a decision without turning it into a negotiation. With the doctor still within reach, he confirmed exams, treatment, and follow-up. Then, back in the car, the silence got heavy. Maya stared out the window like she was searching for any place where she could breathe without explanation. Noah, full and warm, started to nod off, hugging his stuffed dog, his head resting on his mother's arm. "I don't want," Maya started, then stopped. The sentence had been stuck in her throat for months. "I don't want to be somebody's Christmas project." Graham nodded slowly, taking the hit as fair. "I don't want that either." He looked at the stream of cars ahead and spoke with a calm that cost more effort than any speech. "I just can't take you back to the street tonight. Not after what I heard." Maya clenched the edge of her coat like she was holding her dignity between her fingers. "And what do you think I am? A problem for you to solve?" "No," Graham answered quickly, and this time his voice carried something real. "You're a mother trying to keep her kid alive. And I've spent my whole life pretending I didn't see mothers like you. Instead of dropping them at some luxury hotel that would feel like a display case." Graham asked the driver to head toward a quiet building on the Upper West Side, where he kept a fully furnished apartment he barely used. One of those properties that existed more to have than to live in. He went up first, unlocked the door, turned on the lights. The place was spotless and ready, and completely dead, with no trace of laughter or life. When Maya walked in with Noah, her reaction was strange. No excitement, just shock. Like she was waiting for someone to appear and say, "Grab your things and leave." "It's just for a while," Graham said, trying not to sound like he owned her story. "A year of rent covered. No contract shoved in your face, no bill. You need to recover. He needs to sleep in a bed." Maya stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the couch, the curtains, the humming heater. Noah ran into the bedroom, pushed the door open, and let out a tiny whoa, like he just walked into a castle. He came back, tugged his mom's hand, and pointed at the bed like he was pointing at a miracle. "Mom, there's a real pillow." That's when Maya broke. Not with screaming, but with a cry she tried to hide behind her hands. The tears slipped through anyway. It was like her body had finally found a place safe enough to collapse. Graham didn't stand there watching. He knew that kind of emotion needs privacy. He went to the kitchen, opened cabinets, mentally listed what was missing, made quick calls. Basics delivered that same night. Extra clothes, medicine, everything. Then he did something Maya didn't expect. He asked instead of deciding, "Is Noah in school?" Maya wiped her face, embarrassed. No, I tried, but..." The sentence fell apart under its own weight. "Then tomorrow doesn't exist," Graham cut in, reminding himself of the rule for that night. "Tonight, we just make sure he has somewhere to be. I'll figure out a school for him. Not for status, for stability." Maya looked at him like what he was offering was too big to hold, because it was. Accepting it meant trusting, and trust had become the most expensive thing in her life. Noah came back to the living room with his stuffed dog under one arm and asked, with disarming sincerity, "Mister, are you really friends with Santa?" Graham gave a crooked, almost painful smile. "No." He crouched down to the boy's height. "But I can. Try to be someone who helps when he's busy." Noah nodded like that explanation was perfect. Watching that scene, Maya suddenly realized something that squeezed her heart. Graham wasn't just helping them. He was trying to save himself from something too. The question hanging in the air, one no one said out loud, was simple and dangerous. What exactly was a man like him running from inside his own life? Inside, the apartment had a different kind of silence than the street. It was a warm silence, with the heater humming softly and the smell of simple food drifting from grocery bags. Bread, soup, fruit. Maya walked slowly, as if learning how heavy her own footsteps were in a place where no one was going to kick her out. She turned on the faucet just to watch water run, stood there for a few seconds, then shut it off like she was guarding a secret. When you've spent months without a safe place to wash your face, even tap water starts to feel like a quiet miracle. Noah had already claimed his corner. sitting on the living room rug with fresh sheets of paper from a quickly thrown together school kit, drawing with his tongue peeking out in concentration. The stuffed dog sat beside him, watching. Graham watched from a distance, careful not to invade, with that uneasy feeling of being inside a life that wasn't his. And at the same time, feeling closer to something real than he had in years. He pulled his phone out of habit and saw the usual flood. Messages, missed calls, people demanding things. For the first time in a long time, he didn't answer right away. Maya came back from the bedroom and froze when she saw Noah drawing. She stood behind him, quiet. He held up the page proudly, showing her first, then Graham. It was a simple house with a chimney, a tree beside it, and 3 stick figures holding hands. One small, one taller with long hair, and the third in a big coat. Noah pointed with his finger, not understanding how heavy that little choice was. This is me. This is my mom. And this is you. Maya's hand flew to her mouth, like someone had tugged a wire inside her. Graham froze for a second, not because he didn't like it, but because that drawing carried a weight he wasn't sure he deserved. Noah, Maya began, trying to protect her son from the world without crushing his hope. He's just helping us. I know, Noah said, frowning like it was obvious. That's why he's like Santa's friend. Graham let out a quiet laugh, but it came tangled with a lump in his throat. Santa's friend. That's how a child translated a person who decided to actually see them. And in that moment, Graham understood something without needing words. To Noah, he wasn't the guy with the money. He was the man who, in a city that pretends not to see, actually stopped. Maya stepped closer and spoke so softly only he could hear. I don't know how to say thank you without feeling. Small. Graham shook his head, and the answer came out simple, almost a whisper. Don't thank me. Just get better. And let him get better. She nodded, and for a while they just stood there, watching the boy add details to the drawing. A window, a crooked star, a big door. That door hit Graham like a punch. Noah had drawn it bold, like the most important part of the house was that, a door that closes. Graham moved over to the window and looked out at New York shining below, as indifferent as ever. But inside, something in him had shifted. It wasn't about becoming a good guy. It was realizing his life was full of places, and empty of people. And as Noah kept drawing, Maya breathing a little easier, a thought hit Graham harder than any business loss. If he could still feel this much here, what exactly had he turned into to stop feeling anything at all before tonight? Later that same night, the apartment felt like a completely different place. Not because it had magically turned into a home, but because it finally had life inside it. The TV murmured an old movie in the background. The kettle whistled softly. Noah's pencil rasped across the paper. Graham leaned against the kitchen doorway, watching a rare scene. People resting without fear. For the first time in a long time, he noticed his own body slowing down, like the world had stopped demanding performance every second. He thought about that hot conference room, the champagne glasses, rehearsed smiles, promises that always ended in more work and less presence. What hit him wasn't guilt. It was quiet embarrassment. He'd piled up everything there was to pile up. And yet the most expensive moment of the night was a boy drawing a house with a huge door. A door that closes. Maya appeared in the bedroom doorway, holding her coat, already a little more at ease, and spoke in a low, no-drama voice. I don't know what's going to happen to us later, but I know tonight he's going to sleep without jumping at every street noise. Thank you for that. Graham didn't respond with some poetic line. He just nodded, accepting how heavy that simple gratitude really was. Before the silence turned awkward, he said one practical human thing. Tomorrow doesn't exist. Tonight you rest. Tonight you stay. Noah came running in, holding up his finished drawing, and pointed to the last detail. Above the house he'd drawn a crooked, oversized star shining all by itself. "So you don't forget," he said, like it was obvious. Graham took the paper carefully, like it was fragile, and it became painfully clear that success, the way he'd been living it, was easy to measure and hard to feel. But this, seeing someone safe, watching someone breathe without fear, didn't fit on any spreadsheet. The image that closed the night was this: a very rich man sitting on the floor in a wrinkled suit, holding a child's drawing like it was the first real thing he'd received in years. In the end, it wasn't a mansion that changed anyone's life that night. It was one man who finally stopped walking past. Graham didn't turn into a saint, and he didn't fix the world. He simply learned, in the hardest and simplest way, that you can be incredibly rich and still live in a place that's empty on the inside. And that sometimes the first thing we need to buy isn't luxury, it's the courage to really look. What would you have done in his place on that sidewalk? And which moment hit you hardest? Noah's request for a door that closes? Or Maya's line about feeling invisible? Tell me in the comments. I really do read them. If this story resonated with you, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Because there are still a lot of people out there living in silence, just waiting for one pair of eyes that refuses to treat them like they're invisible.